And now, a message from the future, 1973. International rock star David Bowie, or as he's known on stage, the alien from outer space, Ziggy Stardust, is preparing for his new record that will release on April 16th, 1973. On that day, we'll say goodbye to Ziggy Stardust and hello to Aladdin Sane. We hope that his sudden rise to incredible stardom won't go to his head.
David Bowie, Major Tom, Ziggy Stardust, Halloween Jack, the Thin White Duke. Regardless of the character, Bowie's artistry is always at the center of each musical project. While today he and these characters are recognized as some of the most innovative popular music stars of all time, this was not always the case. While achieving success with the 1969 single Space Oddity, Bowie was still an unknown talent. By 1971, he had created 4 albums, 2 self-titled, The Man Who Sold the World, and Hunky Dory. While these albums have been reevaluated in the modern era, they failed to prove Bowie's commercial viability. But in 1972, Bowie would create one of the most influential and greatest albums of all time, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. The album and subsequent tour would rocket Bowie into superstardom. On top of touring for the album, Bowie mixed the Stooges album Raw Power and produced Lou Reed's landmark album Transformer. Bowie's influence on rock music was quickly expanding, and the question soon arose, what will he do next? For his next album, Bowie wanted to branch out from the music and persona of the previous album, avoiding making a Ziggy Part 2, as he called it. And he decided to write the new album while on the road on a tour of America. During his tour of America, Bowie was simultaneously engrossed and appalled at what he saw, and this division would be evident on the finished product. A new character for the album was created to be a reflection of Bowie's struggles and inner turmoil. This character would become the namesake of the album, Aladdin Sane. The album showed a level of musical and emotional exploration that was risky for a follow-up to such a massive hit album. And this bold statement ensured that Bowie would not become a novelty act, and that Ziggy Stardust was truly dead. The album debuted at the top of the UK albums chart and stayed for 5 weeks, while in America, the album reached number 17 on the Billboard Top LPs and Tape chart, making the album the most commercially successful release for Bowie in both countries. The album reached top 10 positions all around the world and became the UK's highest-selling album of the year in 1973. It sold an estimated 4.6 million copies, making it one of Bowie's highest-selling albums. The album has gone on to become iconic and beloved by the music world. To find out why, we'll go through the album chronologically. This is... The album begins with a high-energy showstopper, Watch That Man. Before discussing the song, it is important to mention that on the physical release of the album, each song, except for one, was attributed to a location. This location represents where the song is written and based on. Watch That Man is attributed to New York, not only where the song was based off of, but also one of the 2 studios where the album was recorded, RCA Studio. This song reflected a change in style from the glam rock pageantry of Ziggy Stardust to the hard-rocking, over-the-top, larger-than-life, avant-garde, energetic, Americanized sound of Aladdin Sane. As a fan of the Rolling Stones, Bowie cited their influence on this album, and especially this song, which carried a resemblance to one of their biggest hits from the 70s, Brown Sugar. As a band which found immense inspiration from American music, it was natural that Bowie took inspiration from them when creating an American sound. The song's music is an aggressive onslaught with a raucous energy, and the deliberate choices in the mixing of the audio make it sound almost like a live recording. Bowie's voice being lower in the mix trains the listening audience to understand that Bowie's lead vocals are not the star attraction of the album musically, but rather part of a team of standout musicians. The team backing Bowie on this song and the album are the Spiders from Mars, with Mick Ronson on lead guitar, Trevor Bolder on bass, and Mick Woody Woodmansey on drums, and guest pianist Mike Garson. Woodmansey perhaps gave the best summary of the style of Watch That Man. Watch That Man and Cracked Actor both reminded me of Stone songs, kind of a heavier version of some of the songs on Exile on Main Street. Just good, straight-ahead rock tunes with a honky-tonk piano and wailing backing vocals supplied by Linda Lewis. The lyrics were very Bowie though. Watch That Man suggesting to me a decadent anything goes type party. This song was made in response to Bowie seeing 2 concerts of the American rock band the New York Dolls. Bowie was impressed and wanted to emulate their sound. Lyrically, the song is based on an event that happened early in his trip to America. Bowie performed in New York's Carnegie Hall on the 3rd day of the North American leg of the Ziggy Stardust tour. And Watch That Man was written to pinpoint and exaggerate the incident of a party thrown after this show. I believe it fitting to begin an album that thematically is about the pressures of stardom with a response to an event based around this stardom. The whole album's style of writing is changed from previous efforts because of the difference in situation around their creation. This is the first album written by Bowie from the position of stardom, as well as the first album of his written on the road. And since America was still so new to him, the culture was fascinating to him. Pianist Mike Garson later described Bowie's attitude in America. I'll never forget when we had these dinners after shows, he would sit next to me and he would, kind of like what you're doing, he would interview me and want to know about the New York scene, what I did in jazz, what was going on in the avant-garde scene in New York, and all that. He was an absolute sponge, and he was very much in listening mode and learning mode. He really loved America because Little Richard and Elvis Presley and people like that were his influences, same as for Mick Jagger. So they were like chameleons, and he would just absorb at a rate that was frightening, actually. Watch That Man's first verse establishes a party being thrown with various characters, but the narrator seems to be disinterested, continually saying everything is so-so. This is despite the antics of the partygoers, such as Lorraine and her shimmying and Reverend Alabaster's dancing. Verse 2 introduces more partygoers, including a Benny Goodman fan who paints holes in his hands, joking pundits, and smoking manholes. There are also 2 references to John Lennon in this verse. The first being the line, "The girl on the phone wouldn't leave me alone," a throwback from Someone's LP. This is a reference to Lennon's song I Found Out from his debut studio album John Lennon Plastic Ono Band. This album was influential to Bowie, and he'd later record 2 of its songs, Mother and Working Class Hero. Another line that references Lennon is, "A lemon in a bag played the tiger rag." The bag part of the line is a reference to Lennon and Yoko Ono's concept of bagism. This concept satirized prejudice by saying that if you wear a bag over your entire body, then you cannot be judged upon your outward appearance, but rather your words. The song's line also references the song Tiger Rag, a jazz standard recorded by the original Dixieland Jazz Band in 1927. The chorus has had multiple interpretations, with one explaining that the phrase "watch that man" acts as a paranoid warning, and another explaining that the phrase is a call to attention to watch someone. While the song does not explain who this man is, we can at least come to the conclusion that he is a performer, as the end of the chorus delivers the lines, "He walks like a jerk, but he's only taking care of the room, must be in tune." With this context, it is likely that the man to watch is Bowie himself, or the Aladdin Sane character, within the story of the album. Introducing the album with a crazy, high-energy party perfectly depicts the environment around Bowie during his newfound stardom, and this environment will cause Bowie to crack. Following the raucous energy of Watch That Man is the subdued and moody title track, Aladdin Sane, 1913 to 1938 to 1970... The title is a pun on the phrase Aladdin Sane, and is thought to be based on both Bowie's mental struggles and his half-brother Terry's schizophrenia. Bowie had feared developing schizophrenia due to it consistently affecting members of his family. Bowie later elaborated on the Aladdin Sane character and his personal connection to him. Aladdin Sane was my idea of rock and roll America. Here I was on this great tour circuit, not enjoying it very much. So inevitably my writing reflected that, this kind of schizophrenia that I was going through. Wanting to be up on stage performing my songs, but on the other hand not really wanting to be on those buses with all those strange people. Being basically a quiet person, it was hard to come to terms with, so Aladdin Sane was split down the middle. The title song was written on board the RHMS Elenis on his trip back to the UK in December of 1972. At the time, Bowie had a severe fear of flying and would often travel by boat. In the song's title, there is a set of years, 1913, 1938, and 1970-something. The first 2 years are the years prior to World War I and World War II. The third year, an unknown year in the 1970s, was meant to represent an oncoming Third World War. The musical style of the song represents another change in style from Bowie's earlier works. The Spiders collaborate to create an experimental, immersive soundscape, and a guest musician takes the lead. American pianist Mike Garson delivers a breathtaking piano accompaniment in the verses and choruses. While this is one of his most standout moments on the album, Garson is consistently present on the album. Due to the mixing of the song, the piano takes the lead throughout the song, even over the lead vocals during the chorus, making it the lead voice of the song. Garson later described his involvement in the recording. I was in a really good headspace for that album. I think David was excited to use my piano skills because he had explored the depth of guitar on Ziggy with Mick. It doesn't get any better than that album, but he now wanted me to be the soloist. The guitar is there, obviously, but the piano is the feature, and what a bold move by David. And being a little naive and not a rock musician, I just went in and played what I might have played on anyone's albums if fate let me. But the key word was, let me. He was willing to let me do anything I wanted, whereas most producers and singers, they want to keep you playing just something very simple and supportive. He was looking for something that was so over the top, and I was somehow able to give it to him, and that's the mystery to me. The song's structure is built around the number 9. The introduction is 9 bars, then there are 2 9-bar verses, a 9-bar chorus, and another 9-bar verse and chorus. Then we have a 45-bar piano solo, the centerpiece of the track. When Garson originally played the solo, he played it in a blues style and then a Latin style, but at the request of Bowie, he played it in an avant-garde style. The performance was used in the final mix. The solo at first can seem disconnected and arbitrary, but when examined, it has structure. It begins jarring and dissonant, but then slowly pieces itself together until it disintegrates and sinks further. I'll show timestamps of the different movements so you can examine the track yourself if you like. The first part, at 2 minutes and 4 seconds, shows Garson playing a discordant 4-note pattern that splinters as it progresses. The second part, at 2 minutes and 22 seconds, shows manic keyboard runs. The third part, at 2 minutes and 41 seconds, quickly quotes distant fragments of American music standards Rhapsody in Blue, Tequila, and On Broadway, which Bowie sings on the outro. The fourth part, at 2 minutes and 58 seconds, immediately ends this with aggressive chord pounding. Then the fifth part, at 3 minutes and 16 seconds, finishes the solo by slowly reintegrating it back together and joining the bass line. As the song progresses, it gets more insane and dissonant until it winds down and ends with an off-putting piano ending. This song musically represents a mental decline and descent into madness, which supports the lyrical identity of the song. The lyrics were inspired by Evelyn Waugh's novel Vile Bodies, which Bowie read on his trip on the RHMS Ellis. In the novel, young people act ridiculous, dress up in costumes, sleep with each other, have midnight treasure hunts in the city streets, and drink and drug themselves into oblivion. The book ends on the battlefield, unresolved. The title track of Aladdin Sane was described as a premature epitaph for his own lost generation, though this time the story would end in nuclear holocaust. Vile Bodies was published in 1930, but Bowie believed the descriptions of the youth resembled the current generation. He explained this in an interview in Circus magazine. The book dealt with London in the period just before a massive imaginary war. People were frivolous, decadent, and silly. And suddenly they were plunged into this horrendous holocaust. They were totally out of place, still thinking about champagne and parties and dressing up. Somehow it seemed to me that they were like people today. The first 2 verses of the song display a collection of frail and depressing images, an old bouquet of dead roses, saddening glissando strings, and passionate bright young things taken to war. The choruses describe battle cries juxtaposed with champagne and millions weeping fountains before sunrise. This sunrise seems to represent the nuclear holocaust mentioned previously, and after these we are repeatedly offered the same question: who will love Aladdin Sane? With the disaster wiping out life, Aladdin Sane is the only person left. The third verse describes that the only things that wait for him are sad remains. Out of the shadow of the title track, we enter the future with Drive-In Saturday. The song was released as the second single from the album and got to number 3 in the UK. However, it was rejected by Bowie's current label, RCA, who issued Time instead. Bowie had offered Drive-In Saturday to English rock band Mott the Hoople, but it was reportedly turned down, either due to the complex chord progression, as the band's lead vocalist Ian Hunter said, or to distance themselves from Bowie as they did not want to rely on his compositions for their single releases. No matter the reason, Bowie was offended at the rejection. Therefore, he recorded it himself and included it on Aladdin Sane. The song's musical style pays tribute to 50s doo-wop with a 12/8 time signature rhythm, an accompanying saxophone and backing vocals performed by Bowie. However, the theremin-like saxophone pattern in the verses, gritty guitar, and synthesizer add a more futuristic tinge to the song. As both styles are combined, we are presented with a retro-futurist soundscape, which fits the lyrical content of the song. It was written on an overnight ride from Seattle to Phoenix and inspired by something Bowie saw from his window. He describes it in Circus magazine in 1973. Apparently they only let the trains pass through this particular stretch of desert late at night, but if you don't go to sleep when you were supposed to, you suddenly see the moon shining on 17 or 18 enormous silver domes. I couldn't find out from anyone what they were, but they gave me a vision of America, Britain, and China after a nuclear catastrophe. The radiation has affected people's minds and reproductive organs, and they don't have a sex life. The only way they can learn to make love again is by watching video films of how it used to be done. This idea became the basis for Drive-In Saturday. The song's story is set in a post-apocalyptic future in the 21st century, and when Bowie debuted the song live, he introduced it as a song from 2033. Seemingly taking place after the prior song's Third World War, nuclear radiation has had terrible effects on the human species, including the dissolution of human sexual contact. But the youth relearned this through watching icons of the 70s, including Mick Jagger and English model Twiggy. The song even references Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung, who Bowie was inspired by around that time. Bowie was interested in Jung's explorations into the psyche and the idea of archetypes, and both of these were foundational concepts for Aladdin Sane. While musically representing an atomic age 1950s style, Drive-In Saturday's story celebrates the open sexuality of the 1970s while all of this is happening in the year 2033. The song deals in juxtapositions of nostalgia and futurism both in its music and lyrics. The song presents the innocence of the 1950s, the excess and the weariness of the 1970s, and the perceived horrors of the 21st century. From an imaginative dystopia, we move into a realistic portrait, Panic in Detroit. The song's music is built around a Bo Diddley-style beat at the protest of drummer Woody Woodmansey. He believed it to be too obvious and played something different. Congas and maracas were added to the drumming afterward to achieve Bowie's desired effect. The song has a frenzied atmosphere and becomes more frenetic towards the end until it devolves into miscellaneous city sounds. The lyrics were inspired by Iggy Pop's stories about the Detroit riots in 1967 and the rise of the White Panther Party and its leader, John Sinclair. The song's narrator idolizes a man who looked a lot like Che Guevara and continually tries to get his autograph. At the end of the song, the narrator finds the man slumped over in a chair with a signed autograph for him. This man, who looked a lot like Che Guevara, not only references the Marxist-Cuban revolutionary, but also someone Bowie knew. He was a former classmate of his at Bromley Technical High School who had since become a drug dealer based out of South America. The dark lyrics portray American unrest through the accounts of the narrator, such as in the second verse, he laughed at accidental sirens that broke the evening gloom. The police had warned of repercussions, they followed none too soon. A trickle of strangers were all that were left alive. Bowie commonly wrote dystopian songs, but this was the first of his to be based on real events, marking an uneasy similarity between the prior two dystopian warnings and the current-day turmoil of 1970s America. From the upper Midwest to the West Coast, we have Cracked Actor. The song's music struts with a hard-rocking, dirty, and smarmy attitude. While in Los Angeles, Bowie and an entourage of 46 people stayed at the Beverly Hills Hotel, racking up a $20,000 bill. Bowie felt that he had had the LA experience and observed the excess and decadence, yet grimy underside of the city. Bowie recalled seeing drug use and prostitutes on Sunset Boulevard, and decided to write a song based on this. In verse 1, the narrator describes himself as an aging film star with his life in decay. I've come on a few years from my Hollywood highs, the best of the last, the cleanest star they ever had. And then we find out who he's talking to. I'm stiff on my legend, the films that I made. Forget that I'm 50, because you just got paid. The narrator had just been with a prostitute, and we hear more about this interaction, or maybe more of them, in the chorus. The choruses use a lot of onomatopoeia, or words that imitate sound, to describe what's going on. Each time one of the words is used, it is emphasized by Mick Ronson's guitar, adding an intensity to the onomatopoeia. During the Diamond Dogs tour in 1974, Bowie devised a routine to go with the live version of Cracked Actor. He would wear a cape, sunglasses, and hold a skull. He would have people act as paparazzi, makeup appliers, and lighting gaffers. And at some point in the performance, he would French kiss the skull. The whole production brought the song to life and gave the music a visual identity. The song and performance satirized pretentious actors and lifted the curtain of facade behind the Hollywood dream. Cracked Actor ends side one with a brutal narrative, a hard-rocking energy, and a wonderfully entertaining performance. Side 2 opens with a uniquely brilliant number, Time. It was released as a single from the album in America, Canada, and Japan. The song musically can be described as burlesque, cabaret-style glam rock. Like the title track, Time is led by Garson's piano. He employs an American piano style originating in the 1920s called stride. This style is combined with elements of avant-garde jazz and show music. Garson later described the origin of his piano performance. That was one take. That was right in my wheelbarrow of what skills I had. All he had to do was tell me 1920s. They called it stride piano at the time, and he said, "Can you play it in that style?" He didn't know the word stride, but he said, "Could you play like those guys in the 20s? But twist it a little bit, make it a little avant-garde?" And it was a no-brainer for me. Garson also described the crossroads of musical styles the song represented. This is truly one of my favorite songs ever. Only David could figure out how to mine every style of piano playing I had learned the prior 20 years and find a place for each style in his vast library of songs. This is a style of playing called stride piano, which came from a 20s ragtime technique with that old corny rinky-dink sound. He even altered the piano to sound old. But then, boom, he brings in the pop elements and changes things. Mick played the most beautiful lines. Both David and Mick were masters at musical hooks. They gave me all the freedom to play stride style, and in some places very avant-garde with some outside touches. Middle section and chorus I'm playing straight pop. It seems as though Bowie was the only artist who could combine the genres of ragtime, pop, glam rock, avant-garde jazz, and theater music, and turn it into an excellent song that seamlessly blends them together. Throughout his career, he introduced in-depth and stylistic innovations that turned rock music and concerts into theatrical productions. His unique sense of showmanship, acting prowess, and unbridled imagination made this possible. And a song like Time is a quintessential example of this. His performance on the song is absolutely incredible. He does not simply sing the lyrics, but performs them as if he were on stage as a cabaret performer. This is aided by the choices in the mixing of the song. Co-producer Ken Scott had the idea to capture Bowie's vocal performance so intimately that you could hear him breathing, giving the song an immersive quality. The lyrics of the song personify the concept of time in a disturbing and paranoid way. The first verse describes time as a micromanaging overlord. Time, he's waiting in the wings. He speaks of senseless things. His script is you and me, boy. The second verse describes it as a frightening sexual entity, and in the third verse describes it as bringing people to their deaths. Time, in quaaludes and red wine, demanding Billy Dolls and other friends of mine. Take your time. This verse was written about the first drummer for the New York Dolls, Billy Murcia, who had died the previous year in 1972 from an overdose. The fourth line describes the narrator's own paranoia of time. The sniper in the brain, regurgitating drain, incestuous and vain, and many other last names. Oh well, I look at my watch and it says 9:25 and I think, oh god, I'm still alive? The watch line was most likely a reference to Chuck Berry's Reelin' and Rockin', where each verse begins with the phrase, well I looked at my watch, it was 9:21. With each new verse, the time would change as the song went on. After the fourth line, the song launches into the chorus, which consists of the phrase, we should be on by now, and a repeated chant. This phrase acts as a double meaning, as the narrator could be saying this as he is next on stage to perform, or that he should be moving on. No matter the interpretation, the phrase suggests that we should continue on, whether or not time plans for it. The next song brings a lighter atmosphere, The Prettiest Star. The song was initially written in 1969 and recorded in 1970 as a single. Despite positive reviews upon its release, it underperformed on the music charts. The prior single had been Bowie's breakthrough, Space Oddity, and The Prettiest Star had represented a difference in sound and style that failed to catch on like the previous song. The Prettiest Star was written as a love song for Bowie's first wife, Angela Barnett, and he played it to her over the phone as part of his proposal to her on Christmas Day, 1969. The soft pop instrumentation was amended for the 1973 re-recording. The new version is more glam rock influenced, with elements of British music hall and 50s doo-wop. The playful backing and pretty lead vocals, jaunty rhythm section, and powerful guitar solo combine to create a sublime tune. The lyrics reflect a relationship. The opening line immediately describes this. Cold fire, you've got everything but cold fire. You will be my rest in peace child. I moved up to take a place near you. The oxymoron of cold fire might suggest a false facade that disguises a lack of passion, but fortunately the narrator says that his love does not have this facade, and goes on to say that she will be his rest in peace, and that he's moving to a house closer to her. The second verse explains that the vast scale of the world can be overwhelming. So tired, it's the sky that makes you feel tried. It's a trick to make you see wide. It can all but break your heart in pieces. To escape the weight of the world, the narrator retreats into the warmth of nostalgia. Staying back in your memories are the movies in the past. How you moved is all it takes to sing a song of when I loved the prettiest star. The use of words like movies and star in the choruses help the song to be thematically consistent with the rest of the songs on the album, and the use of future nostalgia connects the song to earlier moments on the album like Drive-In Saturday. The title could also hold a double meaning, either alluding to a star in the sky or a celebrity. Both make sense within the narrative context of the song and the album. The Prettiest Star acts as a genuine statement of love, and one of the more tender moments of the album. Going from a tender display of love to the opposite, we have the fourth single from the album, Let's Spend the Night Together. The song was originally written and recorded by the Rolling Stones in December 1966. In an album that takes inspiration from the Stones' sound, it is fitting to include a cover of one of their classic songs. This cover of the song features a hard-rocking glam rock edge with an American energy. The combination of the speedy rhythm section, vigorous guitar, and chaotic piano create a soundscape that reflects the impulsive energy of the song's lyrics. The line delivery of the original song reflects a slightly younger and more moody character and atmosphere, while Bowie's performance is an aggressive, lascivious romp. Bowie also makes some changes and additions to the song to make it his own. He makes a slight change to the third line, changing the word tied to tired. The new line reads as, "I'm going red and my tongue's getting tired." The original line shows the narrator as slightly shy and a bit hesitant, while the changed line shows the narrator as having prior experience. Another change is the addition of a spoken word stanza near the end. As the music slowly quiets, Bowie says, "They said we were too young. Our kind of love was no fun. But our love comes from above. Do it. Let's make love." The narrator gives a moral basis for the subject of the song. Near the end of the speech, Ronson's guitar revs up like an engine. Then we're jolted into a final chorus, and then an abrupt stop. Next we arrive at the lead single from the album, the Jean Genie. It was the first song composed for the album and was completed in New York. While completing the song in New York City, Bowie spent time with American actress and model Serinda Fox. He later said, "I wrote it for her amusement in her apartment." He was initially introduced to her following the New York Dolls show he attended. She was the girlfriend of the Dolls singer David Johansen. He made a promotional video for the song that combined concert and studio footage of the band performing the song as well as intercut shots of Bowie posing with Serinda Fox. Bowie wanted the video to show Ziggy as a kind of Hollywood street rat with a consort of the Maryland brand. The music of the song originated on the Ziggy Stardust tour as an improvisational jam called Bussin'. The consistent R&B guitar riff resembles other blues songs, such as the Yardbirds cover of Bo Diddley's I'm a Man. The song also has a remarkable resemblance to French singer Jacques Dutronc's La Fille du Père Noël. There are additional musical elements that give the song its character, including added percussion that sounds like the rattle of a rattlesnake, and Bowie's harmonica. Bowie described the sound he desired from the harmonica. "I wanted to get the same sound the Stones had on their very first album on the harmonica. I didn't get that near to it, but it had a feel that I wanted, that 60s thing." Bowie described the early making of the song in his 2005 book, Moon Age Daydream. Starting out as a lightweight riff thing I had written one evening in New York for Serinda's enjoyment, I developed the lyric to the otherwise wordless pumper, and it ultimately turned into a bit of a smorgasbord of imagined Americana, based on an Iggy-type persona. The title, of course, was a clumsy pun upon Jean Genie. Looking at the song in this way, it makes sense why it was chosen as the single from the album. Not only is it catchy and energetic, but it also serves as a tribute to Bowie's view of America. The song's central character, the Jean Genie, was inspired by Iggy Pop. Bowie later elaborated on this. The Jean Genie was an ode to Iggy, I guess, or the Iggy-type person. White trash, trailer park kid thing. The closet intellectual who wouldn't want the world to know that he reads. The opening verse reads as, "A small Jean Genie snuck off to the city, strung out on lasers and slashback plazas, and ate all your razors while pulling the waiters, talking about Monroe and walking on Snow White. New York's a go-go and everything tastes right. Poor little greenie." The name of the character, Jean Genie, was a pun on the name of French novelist Jean Genie. The setting of the song was inspired by Max's Kansas City, a popular nightclub in New York City. The chorus describes the behaviors of the Jean Genie. The Jean Genie lives on his back. The Jean Genie loves chimney stacks. He's outrageous. He screams and he bawls. The Jean Genie, let yourself go. The third verse further describes the character. He's so simple-minded he can't drive his module. He bites on the neon and sleeps in the capsule. Loves to be loved. The first line of this verse was the source of the name of the Scottish rock band Simple Minds. The lyrics as a whole act not just as a story, but as a sequence of images meant to visualize this smorgasbord of emergent Americana. Bowie later remarked on his enjoyment of the song. "I think it's a really good song, and I actually enjoy playing it and singing it. It's one of the few that I can keep going back to. I guess it's because it's essentially rooted in straight old-fashioned blues. I mean, it's basically Muddy Waters' I'm a Man, isn't it?" As Bowie left America and returned to London to end the Ziggy Stardust tour, the album leaves America and returns to London to end with Lady Grinning Soul. The song was the last to be written, recorded, and sequenced on the album. The original intended ending song was a remake of his 1972 single, John I'm Only Dancing. Bowie was unsatisfied with the original recording and attempted multiple re-recordings, including a saxophone version for Aladdin Sane. Bowie decided to replace the song with Lady Grinning Soul, going for a completely different ending to the album. The song was recorded in Trident Studio in London, one of the two studios where the album was recorded. Musically, the song allows each of the lead instrumentalists to shine at the same time. Bowie delivers a dramatic and vulnerable lead vocal. Mick Ronson plays a Spanish flamenco-influenced acoustic guitar and glam rock electric guitar solo, and Mike Garson exhibits another brilliant piano performance. He would later describe the combination of influences in his piano part. Lady Grinning Soul brought out the romantic playing in me that comes from composers like Franz Liszt and Chopin. I mixed this with elements of Liberace and Roger Williams, which were styles of music that were always put down because they were so mainstream. I played in a very undissonant way here, where Aladdin Sane is about as dissonant as you can get. Bowie also went into further detail behind the aesthetic and meaning of the song. Mike Garson's piano opens with the most ridiculous and spot-on recreation of a 19th century music hall exotic number. I can see now the pose plastique as if through a smoke-filled bar. Fans, castanets, and lots of Spanish black lace and little else. Sexy, This was written for a wonderful young girl whom I've not seen for more than 30 years. When I hear this song, she's still in her 20s, of course. A song will put you tantalizingly close to the past, so close that you can almost reach out and touch it. The sound of ghosts again. This comment from Bowie regarding ghosts puts the musical and lyrical choices of the song into further context. The music reflects an age-long past, with the romantic piano influences and flamenco guitar influences from hundreds of years ago. When paired with the lyrics, which will be discussed soon, the sound has an otherworldly and slightly supernatural beauty. In combination with the surrounding musical elements of the song, the rhythm section, 12-string guitar, and saxophone, the song achieves an intriguing, romantic, beguiling, and mysterious atmosphere. The opening lyric, "She'll come, she'll go," reintroduces a lyrical theme from the Prettiest Star, contradiction. The entire album has a thematic core of contradiction, whether it be shown in the manic energy that crashes into melancholy from song to song, or the lyrical distinction between writings on sexual relationships and deeply spiritual musings. While Lady Grinning Soul's lyrics might initially appear as the former, it ends up somewhere in the middle of the two identities. The lyrics are told from the perspective of the narrator, who describes an interaction with a lady and tells the audience what to do. The narration reflects a detached and ghost-like entity who can only view the situation, which is between only two people. I believe the narrator is the one experiencing the scenario with the lady, and this detached way of speaking about it gives the relationship between these two a distant feeling. The lady in the song was inspired by American soul singer Claudia Lanier, who Bowie met in 1972. In an interview with Lanier in 2016, she revealed that Bowie called her 2 years prior and said the song was about her. The second verse continues, "Cologne she'll wear, silver and Americard, she'll drive a beetle car, and beat you down at Cool Canasta." This verse humanizes the subject further, and the beetle car line references Lanier's orange Volkswagen. Then we arrive at the chorus, "And when the clothes are strown, don't be afraid of the room. Touch the fullness of her breast, feel the love of her caress. She will be your living end." The romance of the lyrics is shown through a dramatic and cold perspective, especially with the ending line. This is also the ending line of the song, and expertly ties back to the opening line of the song. Both phrases, "she'll come, she'll go," and "living end," are contradictory, and serve to end the album on an evocatively vague, haunting, and perplexing note. The nature of the relationship between the two characters of the song was told by Lanier and Bowie retrospectively. Lanier said, "You never know how you're affecting him. If you're in his company, you don't know what impression you're making on him." Bowie said, "I'm a pretty cold person, a very cold person, I find. I have a strong lyrical, emotional drive, and I'm not sure where it comes from. I'm not sure if that's really me coming through in the songs. They come out and I hear them afterward and I think, well, whoever wrote that really felt strongly about it. I can't feel strongly. I get so numb I find that I'm walking around numb. I'm a bit of an Iceman. This cold persona, combined with the older leanings of the song's music, creates an encapsulation of the man behind the Aladdin Sane character, a distant, even ghostly figure that has an entrancing beauty that breaks through the icy exterior. Lady Grinning's soul gives the album a complex emotional ending that offers both closure and remaining questions. Before we say goodbye to Aladdin Sane, let's look at the album cover. At the time, it was the most expensive album cover ever created. This was due to the printing of the picture. The cover was printed with an unprecedented 7-color system when the standard was 4-color. This allowed for a striking and vivid picture. It's certainly one of the most iconic of all time, but it also expertly serves the most important function of an album cover, to act as a visual representation of and companion to the music within. The photo shoot resulted in numerous different poses, but the one chosen was the only picture where Bowie was looking down with his eyes closed. This body language paired with the airbrushed teardrop reflects the sadness within the character. As well as this, the framing of the subject with a stark white background represents a sense of isolation and alienation. The white background also serves to draw all attention to the subject, which makes sense as Aladdin Sane is the star of the album. The lighting makes Bowie's head and shoulders shadowy, visually conveying a clouded mind space. The bold makeup and hairstyling highlight the over-the-top glam rock musical style. The lightning bolt bisecting Bowie's face represents multiple things, including mental illness, his split feelings on his newfound fame, and the thematic identity of contradictions. Some of the contradictions include the musical difference between energetic rock and roll and contemplative avant-garde exploration, the mental difference between a glossy Americanized facade and a broken, chaotic mind space, the visual difference between a glamorized rock star and a reflective attitude, a lyrical difference between carefree hormonal narratives and paranoid frightening narratives, and the time difference between the rose-tinted nostalgia of the past and the disturbing uncertainty of the future. Considering the depth, creativity, showmanship, and innovation of Aladdin Sane, it's no wonder why it has become one of the most iconic albums of all time.